One steel belt thinner than a coin peels loose inside a spinning tire at highway heat. That single layer let go, and a recall tied to 271 deaths followed. How does one hidden layer kill hundreds? The easy answer is bad drivers on cheap tires. That's wrong. This became one of the deadliest auto safety failures in U.S. history, centered on Firestone tires bolted to the Ford Explorer, America's best-selling SUV at the time. Hundreds of people died and thousands more were hurt before the 2000 recall pulled roughly 6.5 million tires. And here's the unsettling part. The failure hid inside normal-looking tires on a normal-looking truck. Nothing warned you. So what was actually letting go in there? And why did it stay invisible until 65 miles per hour? Start by opening the tire. A radial tire isn't one rubber donut. It's a stack of layers glued together. On the outside is the tread, the part that touches the road. Under that sit two steel belts. Thin sheets of steel wire that keep the tire flat and stable at speed. Under the belts is the carcass. Layers of fabric and rubber that give the tire its shape and hold the air. So tread on top, two steel belts in the middle, fabric and rubber carcass underneath. 3 layers doing 3 jobs. Now the part that matters most. The steel belts don't touch the carcass directly. They're held on by a paper-thin sheet of raw rubber between them. That bonding layer is called skim stock. That thin sheet of skim stock is the whole game. It's the glue holding steel to fabric while the tire spins thousands of times a minute. Picture plywood. Plywood is strong because thin sheets are glued flat under pressure. But snap plywood and it never breaks through the middle of a sheet. It splits at the glue line between them. A tire is the same idea, a laminate, a sandwich of layers. And every laminate has one weakness. It fails where the layers are joined, not through the middle of any single layer. So the question isn't whether the steel is strong or the rubber is tough. Both can be perfect. The question is what happens to the glue line between them once the tire heats up. And a tire on the highway gets very hot. Here's where it gets hot. A rolling tire isn't rigid. Every time a patch of it hits the road, it squashes flat, then springs back. That flexing happens hundreds of times a second at highway speed. And flexing rubber does one thing reliably: it makes heat. The faster and longer you drive, the hotter the inside of the tire climbs. Now add the detail that turned a design choice into a body count. Ford specified a low tire pressure, about 26 pounds per square inch, for the Explorer. Softer tires give a smoother, quieter ride. That sounds harmless. It isn't. A softer, underinflated tire flexes more with every rotation. And more flex means more heat. So the exact setting that made the ride feel nice made the tire run hotter. Why does heat matter so much? Because heat attacks the glue line. Remember the skim stock. That paper-thin rubber bonding the steel belt to the carcass. Rubber holds its grip when it's cool. Heat it over and over and the bond starts to break down. The way a sticker cooked in a hot car slowly loosens at the edges. Once that bond weakens even slightly, a tiny crack can open between the steel belt and the carcass beneath it. At first, it's nothing. A gap you'd need a microscope to see, buried inside a tire that looks perfect from the outside. No warning lights. No wobbles. Just a hairline separation deep in the laminate, getting a little bigger every hot mile. So the tire is now carrying a secret crack at the glue line. What happens to that crack when the wheel is spinning at 65? Now the crack goes to work. A tire at 65 miles per hour is spinning around 1,000 times a minute. Everything on it is trying to fly outward. That's centrifugal force, the same pull that flings water off a spinning towel. That outward pull tugs hardest on the outermost layer, the steel belt and the tread sitting right above our crack. Every rotation does 2 things at once. The outward force yanks the belt away from the carcass. And the flexing at the contact patch works the crack wider, like bending a paperclip back and forth. Peel a little, flex a little. Peel flexes. Thousands of times a minute. So the crack that needed a microscope stops being tiny. It races along the glue line, unzipping the bond between the top steel belt and the carcass. And then all at once, the top belt and the tread let go as one chunk. Insiders call it tread separation. In plain terms, a slab of the tire, belt, and tread together rips off the spinning wheel and flies away. What's left isn't a flat tire. It's a tire that has come apart at speed, the carcass suddenly bare and shredding. The tire effectively disintegrates. There's one more piece. Why were these particular tires so prone to starting that first crack? Investigators focused on one Firestone plant in Decatur, Illinois. According to later investigations, manufacturing problems there, including issues in how the rubber was handled and cured, made weak bonds at the glue line more likely. A weak bond needs less heat to crack. So a tire born with a marginal glue line, run hot and soft under a heavy SUV, was primed to peel. The defect and the driving conditions stacked. But a peeled tire alone doesn't kill 271 people. A blown tire is usually survivable. So why did this specific failure turn deadly? Here's the part that turned a tire problem into a death toll. When a rear tire lets go all at once, it doesn't just go flat. It grabs. A collapsing rear tire suddenly drags on one side of the vehicle. That yank pulls the whole truck toward that corner. The driver feels the car lunge sideways with no warning. And the instinct is to jerk the wheel back. On most cars, that's a scary moment you can usually correct. On the Explorer, it was different. And the difference is physics, not blame. The Explorer sat tall like most SUVs, with its weight high off the ground. Engineers call that a high center of gravity. The heavier a vehicle is up top, the more it wants to tip when it's shoved sideways. A low sports car slides. A tall truck leans. And if it leans far enough while sliding, it flips. So picture the full chain. A rear tire disintegrates. The truck yanks toward that side. The driver overcorrects at 65. The tall, top-heavy Explorer leans hard, catches the pavement and rolls. That's the deadly multiplication. It wasn't a flat tire that killed people. It was a tire that failed violently on a vehicle that flipped when it lost grip. Either problem alone is survivable. Stack together a tire that peels plus a truck that rolls. You get 271 deaths instead of 271 flat tires. The tire supplied the trigger. The high center of gravity supplied the fatal outcome. And for years, each company could point at the other. Firestone blamed the vehicle. Ford blamed the tires. Both factors were real and they only killed together. So the whole picture snaps together. In 2000, roughly 6.5 million tires were pulled off the road in one of the largest recalls of its kind. The fallout was brutal. Firestone and Ford, partners since Harvey Firestone and Henry Ford shook hands nearly a century earlier, publicly blamed each other and ended the relationship. A 100-year handshake broke over a paper-thin glue line. But the lasting fix wasn't a better tire. It was making the hidden danger visible. Congress passed the Tread Act in 2000. It eventually required a tire pressure monitoring system in every new car sold in the US. That's the little tire-shaped warning light on your dashboard right now. It exists because of this. Remember the low 26 pounds per square inch that made the tire run hot? That warning light is the direct answer to it. A sensor that shouts before underinflation ever cooks a bond. Now walk the chain one last time. Brake time equals 0, 6 is /1 steel belt peeled loose because heat, low pressure, and a tall SUV each did a little damage. And stacked they killed. No single villain. A weak glue line, a hot highway, a soft tire, a top-heavy truck. Remove anyone and 271 people likely live. That's the real lesson of the recall. Catastrophes rarely have one cause. They're laminates too. Thin layers of risk bonded failing all at once. Here's the portable takeaway: check your tire pressure. The same physics is under your car tonight. Underinflated tires run hotter. And heat is still what attacks the bond inside every tire on the road. That dashboard light helps, but it usually waits until you're already low. 2 minutes with a gauge keeps a glue line cool. Next time we'll open a different sealed box, how the airbag decides in a fraction of a second whether to fire.